Colorado's seeing a surge in COVID hospitalizations that most other states are not. We'll look at how the experts here are pinpointing the problem. Gun control and mental health. We can discuss both approaches to preventing violence at once. We'll do it today. Another Coloradan arrested for being an insurrectionist. Investigators say he predicted what was going to happen at the Capitol. And a one-woman show with multiple missions to convince us it's safe to go back to theaters and to leave us with a timely lesson. That's next. COVID hospitalizations are climbing in Colorado like they are in few other states right now. Public health experts here point to the more fast-spreading, more serious variants. Yet all seriously sick patients in the hospital are not being tested for those mutations. So Arnusha Roy explains the state's certainty that it's the variants that are a problem.
UC Health is confident.
The majority of the positives that we're seeing as a healthcare system are due to the variant.
Dr. Richard Zane gave a specific number for the health system.
Approximately 70% of the positive cases in the last week are due to the B.1.1.7 variant.
The state has long been warning that variants are circulating in our state. But if every positive case is not screened, how do they actually figure that out?
14 or 15% of positives in the state are being sequenced at this point. We're continuing to try and increase that number.
These are random samples from across Colorado processed at both state and commercial labs.
Based on that random sample, we are able to estimate what proportion of positives in the state are due to one variant versus another.
Some hospital systems like Denver Health are then applying that same model to their hospitalization count.
What we already know to be statewide, which is over half of the patients we see.
UC Health has an initial screening process worked into their system.
We have the ability to detect something called an S drop.
It essentially indicates it might be a variant and is then sent to the state to figure out exactly what kind of variant it is.
It follows in a mathematical pattern, and this is how infectious disease works.
It's really much more about public health surveillance.
And Dr. Hurley said tracking the variants is about the big picture to figure out what's circulating in Colorado, guide the state's response, and also use that data for future modeling.
One of the things we know about the B.1.1.7 or UK variant is that it's more transmissible. And so because of that, it could also actually increase the level of vaccination or immunity that we need to reach to reach herd immunity.
So we also asked the state health department, why wouldn't you screen people specifically in the hospital with COVID right now to figure out if they have the variant or not? They got back to me literally in the last 2 or 3 minutes here, and they said that their approach to this is really just to get a broader sample of what is happening across Colorado so they can start comparing things amongst different demographics, across different geographic areas, to get a better sense of what the variants are doing across the entire state. Now, within the hospitals themselves, both doctors, Kyle, said that for the large part, treatment is staying the same for people, whether they have a variant of COVID or not. There's some new recommendations from the FDA, but a lot of similarities at this point. We did take all of these stats, took it to the health department and experts at MSU Denver. They said everything seems to be lining up. And when it comes to getting a good model and being able to project out, the most important thing they said was to get randomized data from across Colorado, which is what the state said that they are doing.
And Anusha, like anything else in the pandemic, people are applying their preconceived notions to the situation. So especially on social media, you'll hear people saying, well, you know, if hospitalizations are going up, I guess those vaccines aren't any good.
Yeah, and we asked both doctors from UC Health and Denver Health about this, and they said, listen, if this fourth wave we're in right now without vaccination, they said it would be way worse than what we're experiencing. So they don't want you to hear all of this and be discouraged. They actually want the opposite to happen, and they want more people to start signing up for their vaccines and making it out to their appointments, because we're still not at a point where enough Coloradans have received their shots.
For sure. Let's talk about those numbers. Anusha, thank you. There may be this perception that, oh, everybody's vaccinated. It's like 31% of our state's population right now that's completed the vaccination process. It is more than 1.8 million people. It's better than some other states. There are 764,000 Coloradans waiting for their second shot of Moderna or Pfizer. 628 people are currently hospitalized in our state with COVID-19. We actually saw a drop of 6 patients from yesterday's total, so let's hope that's the start of a trend. This time last week, we're at 551 patients in our hospitals. The positivity rate yesterday, tests coming back hot, was 5.2%. So it's just over the 5% threshold that public health experts would like to see. It pulls down our 7-day average to 6.4%. NFL draft just started in Cleveland. The Broncos are picking at 9. The first picks drag a little bit, so the Broncos are not expected to make their selection until after we are off the air. And the biggest story on this draft day is about a 37-year-old. Aaron Rodgers, reigning MVP, wants out of Green Bay, and the Broncos are said to be on the list of the places where the quarterback would like to finish his career. So, I have lit the next fireplace like a prayer candle that it happens, and if it does, in the next 25 minutes, you'll hear about it here. So Colorado Democrats have this list of new gun violence prevention bills that they plan to introduce after Colorado's most recent mass shooting. Let's go through them here. One would allow local governments to enact their own gun laws. Another establishes an Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Will be part of the health department, focused on community awareness and education on gun violence prevention. The third bill from the Democrats expands background checks, prohibits people accused of certain violent misdemeanors from buying a gun for the next 5 years. Democrats in the state legislature just passed a Safe Storage Act for weapons, but Colorado's last, what you would describe as major gun legislation, was the contentious red flag bill a couple years ago. That led to a wave of attempted recalls of Democrats in the legislature. Republicans last successfully recalled 2 Democratic state senators in 2013 over major gun legislation.
It's less a concern of recalls on supporting measures that 80, 70, 75% of Coloradans support. It's, will the Republicans come along with these common sense measures to help save lives? And no one fears recalls on doing things that the vast majority of Coloradans expect their elected officials to do. No one has reached out to my office and said, do nothing.
The more recent Republican recall efforts against Democrats were unsuccessful. In part, it would seem, because targeted lawmakers like State Representative Tom Sullivan, they campaigned for office explicitly saying they wanted to increase gun restrictions. So I hear people saying, oh, gun legislation, sure, but what about mental health? All right, let's talk about that. We can discuss both issues at the same time. You don't have to choose. Up in Weld County, where a lot of folks are very serious about their gun rights, there is a proactive approach to addressing mental health in schools. Our Marshall Zellinger takes us to Windsor High School, where staff are on the lookout for students who silently need support.
When learning virtually, it's easier to sneak away from class. In person, in the halls, in a classroom, it doesn't take a wizard to know when you've disappeared.
We just noticed that a couple of times we'd have students leaving class for extended periods of time.
Libby James is a counselor at Windsor High School, one of the wizards behind the Wizard Alert.
And every single time we've done it, it has been a success in either finding the student and finding out that there's not a crisis, or finding the student and getting them help.
If a student leaves class and is gone for too long, or leaves class upset, the teacher contacts the counseling office or main office to request a Wizard Alert to quickly find the student and make sure they're okay.
How do you know what the student looks like?
We use an app where we're able to send a picture over through the app.
Counselors and administrators start searching the school, each taking a different zone.
Bathrooms are definitely a place that we want to check out. There's a couple of stairwells down at the end. We even search outdoors.
It's a lot more involved than just simply looking out here and saying nobody's here.
Assistant Principal Dick Thomas is responsible for searching outside around the athletic field.
This is the field house. This has locker rooms, it has restrooms, and I go underneath the bleachers, check underneath the bleachers, just really try to check this area well. If there's not much elapsed time, we're pretty successful at finding the students, because if you're 30 minutes out, that student has a lot of time to get off campus.
We're usually able to cover the whole campus in less than, I would say, probably 6 to 7 minutes.
If the student is not found, a parent gets a phone call. The school resource officer is only involved if a parent cannot be reached and the school wants to request a welfare check at the student's home.
Some of them, when they are gone for extended periods of time, is just because they were leaving class a little too early or hanging out with friends, but sometimes there were mental health issues or medical issues where students were in a position that they couldn't get to an adult. And so us being able to find them, we were able to give them that immediate assistance in that crisis situation.
The school couldn't really tell me any specifics, but Dr. James thought there are about 6 to 8 wizard alerts a year. And I asked specifically Kyle about utilizing police for concerns about mental health. She was clear police are only used to search off campus, a check of the home, or a place where the student may be known to hang out.
Very interesting. Take all approaches, and we'll listen to any ideas folks have. Marshall, thank you. I saw some funny business on my cross-country drive, leading to our next question about whether police can lie to you. Entertainers sidelined from the stage for a year are about to get back at it.
I was doing a lot of Zoom comedy from my grandma's garage, and it didn't feel like I was truly participating.
One Woman show hopes to bring the audiences back, make them feel comfortable in a theater, and learn something vital. Next. Well, so much for our impromptu prayer candle lit here in hopes of an Aaron Rodgers to the Broncos trade. Our Broncos insider Mike Kliss is now reporting that the Broncos are not actively engaged in trade talks with the Packers. So much for that, and we now return you to our lives of hopeless monotony.
Just about a picture-perfect spring day in Colorado with blue skies, sunshine, and temperatures warming. Almost 70 in the city. Will go 10 degrees warmer tomorrow. Big jet stream being pushed northward by a blocking ridge of high pressure. So we are high and dry until late in the weekend when a storm in the northwest comes in and brings a chance for more heavy rain and mountain snow. Not tonight. Fair skies, mild, low 44. Tomorrow, sunny and almost 80 degrees. We've got mid-80s in your Saturday forecast. Thunderstorms come back on Sunday afternoon. Rain could be heavy. 1 to 2 inches of rain possible by the time this system rolls out Tuesday midday. And then sunshine and 60s, even 70 degrees by the middle part of next week.
So we've heard some of the people charged for the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol in January say that they didn't think that things really got that violent that day. Or maybe they said, well, we didn't expect trouble when we showed up. The latest Coloradan just arrested said he expected violence and felt that he needed to be there. Logan Grover, 43 years old, from Erie. He's seen on police body cam video outside and inside the Capitol. Day before the attack, he posted online saying that the election was rigged and that he felt compelled to be in Washington, D.C. Court records indicate the FBI arrested Grover yesterday. By our count, he is the 7th man from Colorado, they're all men, arrested in connection with the attempted coup during the certification of the election results. So far, federal prosecutors have charged more than 400 people across the country in that failed insurrection by Trump supporters. Tonight's next question is one of my own. On my family's recent cross-country road trip this month, going through Nebraska on I-80, I passed this temporary roadside sign announcing a police checkpoint right on the interstate with a drug-sniffing dog ahead. And I was like, well, that's weird. They aren't really doing that, are they? And then right there at the next exit, there was a police cruiser hidden in the bushes. It's pretty obvious they were just looking to pull over anybody who pulled off the highway trying to avoid a drug checkpoint, which of course did not actually exist. So here are my questions, because I figure they could apply here in Colorado as well. Can police openly lie to you to get you to incriminate yourself? And is just pulling off the highway probable cause to search your vehicle? We asked our legal analyst, Scott Robinson.
The Supreme Court has specifically stated that lying is okay in questioning a suspect. And no, this would be no different. A sign that falsely tells you that there's a checkpoint ahead is not a constitutional violation. The problem comes around when a fake checkpoint sign is created to try to find who would get off the highway before the checkpoint. That's really the functional equivalent of a mandatory checkpoint. The United States Supreme Court has held definitively some 21 years ago that a checkpoint cannot be used for general enforcement of the criminal law or specifically for drug enforcement, only for sobriety and border checks. If you don't want the police rummaging around in your vehicle, then you need to refuse to consent to a search. Without that, the police are powerless to conduct a constitutional search without probable cause. And simply getting off the highway is never going to be probable cause for a search.
A comedian returns to the stage with a very serious and timely message.
I wanted to do a good job desperately. I really wanted to honor the writer and the play and the audience every night. I'm hoping that I can move the audience.
In your case, please don't move, because her story is next. Stages around Denver have been dark since last year and the theater seats empty. Things are opening back up at places like Aurora's Fox Theater, and a new play there is getting some attention. Our Ann Herbst met with the actress behind a one-woman show who told Ann that she hopes to make people comfortable with returning to the arts.
I'm Janae Burris. I'm a stand-up comedian and an actor, and I'm currently starring in Aurora Fox's production of Queen's Girl in the World. This is the story of Jacqueline Marie Butler, who starts off as a 12-year-old girl in Queens, New York, in 1960s Queens, New York, and her parents feel like she could use a little bit more exposure to the world, and they send her to a private school in Manhattan. It's a private Jewish school, so it's a bit of a culture shock for her. I play 13 characters. Jacqueline, the story is told through Jacqueline's perspective. She meets all kinds of people, and I play them all. So there's a lot of me talking to myself on stage. A lot of us deal with code switching. How do you behave in Manhattan with your Jewish classmates in the 60s, and then how do you go home to Queens, to an urban area where your friends think you're stuck up and that you talk funny? It's really odd that the 1960s it's a generation ago, but so much of it is familiar. You know, there's a moment in the play where she's reading the newspaper and learning about the 4 little girls who were killed in the Birmingham church bombing. Her father, Dr. Butler, in the play is active within social justice. We still kind of have that same fight going on right now. People are still marching. But what's also lovely about the play is that you watch this girl growing and seeing more and more of the world, and you're kind of left with some hope. It's just a reminder that things are hard for humans sometimes, but things are great sometimes too.
Queen's Girl in the World runs through May 9th, Thursday through Sunday. Janae's also doing some stand-up while she's here in town, something a little lighter. You can find details on all her work in this article on 9news.com. A lot of athletic events are dependent on the weather this time of year, like beer pong in Boulder. That and your feedback next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a sign of springtime in Boulder. Our viewer Kevin spotted a very natural scene. Snow-covered beer pong table in a front yard in Boulder. Spring storms plus end-of-semester beer pong competitions. You might get snowed out, kids. It's just what happens. That's the most Colorado thing we saw today. Not everybody in town even thought that paying a lot of first-round draft picks for Aaron Rodgers to come to the Broncos was a smart idea. The noted political commentator here in town, Eric Sonderman, said to me on Twitter, it's heavy ask for a 37-year-old QB. I would just say in defense of all of my fellow 37-year-olds, I think I've got like 2 or 3 more good years left. Then you can toss me on the waste heap. Ava says, y'all are so dumb to believe that Rodgers would come here. Ava, respectfully, hope is never dumb.